All right, since it is 11 o'clock on the dot, people will, of course, be able to continue to join us as we move forward. But I wanted to just let everyone know that we are going to be recording this session. So it will be available afterwards if you have any questions or if you want to return to go back and listen to anything that you heard today. So the session is being recorded. My name is Sarah. I am a development associate at the Nutrition Research Institute in Kannapolis. And we actually have a great group from the NRI on our call today. So I will briefly just introduce everyone. We do have Susan Sumner here on the call. Susan Sumner is a professor of nutrition and pharmacology at the NRI at UNC Chapel Hill as well. So she is here spearheading from her lab and excited to share about her experiences. From the Sumner Lab, we also have Delisha Stewart and Blake Rushing, who are assistant professors of nutrition at the NRI. So they'll both be here as well to answer questions. From the Sumner Lab, we have Alleigh Wiggs, who is a student researcher, undergraduate researcher, who has worked with the team at the NRI. We also have Brandy Childers, who is our assistant director for training programs and partnerships on the call. We have Susie Smith, who is our programs and operations specialist. And the two of them are really the driving force behind getting a lot of the coordination of students who might be interested in coming to our campus to do research work. So they are great faces to know as well. And we have Suzanne Dane, who is our director of development and community outreach. So we have quite a big group here. You'll be hearing mostly from the Sumner Lab so that they can share their experiences with you. But we're really excited to just get started and share a little bit about undergraduate research at the NRI. So a question I thought I would just throw out first, if our researchers are interested in tackling it, is really what makes undergraduate research at the NRI unique. And as you get started sharing, please feel free to tell us a little bit more about yourselves, your research work, and what gets you excited about nutrition research.
Okay, I may start with that one to talk about NRI in general and what makes it unique. And so one of the keys for NRI is to train the next generation of students in nutrition, whether it's to examine social determinants of health disparities or detailed biochemical mechanisms of nutrient intake. And so what we really want to do is help with training that next generation. And for NRI, what's important to our institute has been the field of precision nutrition. And we have very advanced scientific methods for being able to understand individual requirements for and response to nutrients. And with the types of technologies that we're using, we want to understand how our genes and how bacteria in our gut and how many different aspects of the environment, which could include our diet or stress levels or the types of chemicals or drugs that we're exposed to or we take as medications, create differences in our metabolism and how that can affect our individual requirements for and responses to nutrients. So there are lots of opportunities for students to work with the NRI in those different areas.
Yes, it is a truly unique world of research that we have happening here on the campus. And so I think it's fun to share it. I know for students, sometimes it's probably difficult to think about working with the NRI because it's not on main campus. We are located about an hour and a half, 2 hours away from main campus in Kannapolis, North Carolina. And so Dr. Sumner or Dr. Rushing, Dr. Stewart, is it difficult to work with students who are on main campus? How do you find that works out? Because I think you guys have pretty much put together a good way of working and making it happen.
Now, I would say it's really gone very smoothly. At least I can speak to my experiences. I've worked with a few different students, especially here, in the COVID era, and I think part of what's helped it go smoothly is that we're all more familiar with this remote tools to interact with each other and to learn in this environment. And and the students that I've had the opportunity to work with have done really well with that. Everyone's very tech savvy these days with these sorts of things, and so and we've learned a lot both on our side as well as from their point of view in terms of how to facilitate these interactions better, and what particular kinds of projects work really well with those students. And so essentially, it really boils down to just communicating really well on both sides, and we found that the students that we've had have done really well with that. And so, yeah, I would say surprisingly, it has been very smooth, being able to work remotely with students.
And I'm definitely curious about something that you said. What types of projects are a good fit for a student who would be interested in working with researchers at the NRI?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Blake.
Okay. Well, I would say, a lot of the research topics or research projects that I've worked with students on, these are, for one, literature reviews work really well. That's a great way for students to get a grasp of what is the scientific literature in a topic that they're interested in. So we can converse with a student to understand like what they want to learn more about. And then we can give them the tools to synthesize all of the scientific work in that area. And these review type papers are actually very common in the scientific field, and they're a very important part of the scientific community. And so getting that experience and being able to read and interpret scientific works and synthesize an article from that is a very good research experience. I'll say just very quickly, one other type of approach can be a data analysis centered type of project. So at least here in the Sumner Lab, we have projects that are very big data heavy, or that they're very computationally centered. And so students working remotely, that can be very amenable for that, because we can have ways of having students remote into certain softwares and work with that data analysis or computational approach, which again is a very, very important skill in the science world. And I think that could actually prepare these students better than a lot of other students if they have sort of that computational centric approach, because that's something that's really difficult for students to get at this stage of their career. So I find it to be a fruitful research experience.
That's awesome. I know that we have a student on the call as well. Alleigh, I don't know if you want to speak a little bit to your experience and to what it was like to research with the NRI. And I also just wanted to note that as we go through these questions, as we all converse, if any of the students on the call right now have questions about participating in research, please feel free to throw them into the chat, and then we can get you talking with the researchers, with our students, as we keep moving forward too.
Yeah, of course. I don't know why I look so grainy, but everything you've heard from Blake really reflects what I've been doing for the past year. So I started working with the NRI and specifically the Sumner Lab right as COVID started. So I didn't really have the experience of being an undergrad while the COVID restrictions weren't up. So coming in, I figured that I was going to be doing some work anyway. And I started initially working with Dr. Stewart. And coming into the lab, I thought it was going to be a little bit more of a typical undergraduate research experience where you are working with a PI, they have a project that they're doing, and you are going to be doing some menial work on the side for it. But I really got encouraged to think about, what is interesting to me, what's something that I want to be researching and maybe working with in the future, and then how am I going to put these things together? So there were a lot of points where I was thinking, I'm an undergrad, I don't know how to do this, I can't do this. But I had a lot of really great support. And we actually got a review published last year. So the review has been a really great thing to do as an undergrad remote. And it's pushed me to really push myself and see what I can do and really learn more about the literature and see what this process is like. And then recently I've started working with Blake on some data analysis, and that's been really great to do remote as well.
That is awesome. And I love that you touched on something that I will say we have a variety of wonderful labs at the NRI, but the Sumner Lab really believes in mentorship. And so undergraduate students who come in are going to be mentored and guided and really given some great opportunities. So I'm so glad that that was your experience and that it really gave you that challenge, but in a good way.
Yeah, I did want to add to that and just say that, you know, Alleigh's really done a great job. And it is true that when she came in, she wanted to know, you know, how she could support our research. And Delisha and I turned that around pretty right away and said, you know, where do you want to go in your career and how can we help you? Because pretty much whatever you work on that's nutritionally, you know, has a nutritional component to it, we can integrate that into our research. And so you're helping us, right? By us helping you. And so that's really a philosophy we try to use. And I think most people, when they sit down to think it through, that's what they would want to do. So most laboratories. Yeah.
Yes. And you know what you also just made me think of, Dr. Sumner, just to throw it out there so that students are aware, you have had some really good experience working with students like Alleigh virtually and throughout COVID, but you do also welcome students into your lab when resources and their goals allow you to do so. So what's really neat is that there are all of these opportunities. You can work from main campus and be a little bit more virtual and work on the projects mentioned, or we've had students who've had the opportunity to actually, they're from Kannapolis or they're living in Kannapolis for the summer and they are in your lab working day to day with the team. So it's great that there are just so many unique opportunities designed to meet that student and what their needs are.
Yeah, so we do have the student housing here that students can, and Brandy and Susie are the contacts on that. And Delisha, did you want to talk about some of your experiences working with Herman and where that went to?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, just in terms of engaging undergrads as well as graduate students and even high school students, we have awesome and phenomenal infrastructure at NRI to be able to do so. And I will say that, you know, our Susie and Brandy and Eddie are just over the moon, over the top, and Ryan Davalt in terms of being able to accommodate students who are not in the local area so that they still, you know, can fully capitalize on all the things we have to offer. Like in particular, you know, at the North Carolina Research Campus, everybody is kind of doing something that has a nutrition or precision nutrition focus. So let's say that first of all. But specifically, you know, the broad range of disciplines that the faculty at NRI are working on. You could work on a project in cancer, the exposome, maternal and child health, fetal alcohol spectrum disorders, cardiometabolic diseases in terms of the outcomes or as related to microbiome, as Dr. Sumner mentioned. We have investigators specifically focused on looking at the role of different genetic polymorphisms across an array of disease outcomes. And then, of course, because we do nutrition research, obesity, a lot of people kind of look at that as a comorbid or primary, you know, part of what they're doing in their, if you will, disease flavor, you know, what they specifically look at and what's interesting to them. Because we know that specifically precision nutrition is a path to potentially reducing the epidemic of obesity. And so a lot of people, even if you don't start out looking at obesity, it usually intersects at some point across your research. And I've had the opportunity to work with high school students from the local community, as well as undergrads, as well as grad students, what I'll call transitional students, students who are in the middle of, they just got their undergrad degree and they'd love to do some research before they go to med school. And so we've had the range of students come through the lab, and it's been really, you know, it's been really a delight for me to do it. For me personally, I like to see students who come into the lab for the first time, and they're so excited, and being able to show them the things that they've read about in their books or learning about the scientific method in theory, to be able to show them what that looks like in practice. And, you know, taking them through the systematic steps kind of helps them, especially when they're going on to further their education, I've had many of them say, oh, this process will help transcend across other areas of my life. Just the way you all teach us how to do things in the lab, because you have to be safe. You know, you have to be cognizant of the things that I'm doing are important to potentially somebody's life, how they're going to live their life, what they're going to do to change their life or to make their life better in terms of nutrition. So yeah, we've got, I think it's an awesome place to be able to come and do undergraduate research or research in general. Yeah, because we do have the infrastructure, like I said, and so many of the faculty are very open. You know, it takes a lot of time to work with students who are not trained in the laboratory. But I will also say that we have had the wonderful experience of having a lot of students come who do have some lab experience. And like Dr. Sumner says, even though they're so grateful that we've helped them, they have done a tremendous job of helping us further our research work.
And I'll jump in and say that we've had hundreds through the years of interns all levels. And one of the things that I hear most often is that the experience they get at the NRI is a more personalized, more attentive, closer relationship with the mentor than they get elsewhere. So I think that that is something that we should not downplay.
Yes, just so that everyone on board, in the chat, I have dropped in a couple of links. There's a link to our website. There's a link to a specific page on Kannapolis, but probably most importantly, there is a link to our directory. And in that directory, there is an introduction to all of our scientists, including Dr. Sumner, Dr. Stewart, and Dr. Rushing, who are here today. But our other scientists, we have 20 in all, who are conducting research. So if this is something that you're interested in, I highly recommend taking a look at that directory, seeing if any of those research areas pique your interest. And if there's a connection there, our directory includes contact information. You can get in touch really with all of us, with Brandy as well, and just kind of express your interest so that if there's an opportunity, we can get you linked up with the right investigator for you. So yeah, that is all there. And again, just a reminder, if there are any questions coming in at all, please, I am delighted to direct those questions. You are welcome to come off of your mute and ask the question directly to our investigators and our student on the call. So we are welcome to your interaction. We'd love to answer any questions that you might have about research at the NRI. Let's see, I have some questions I've kind of pre-written out as well. I'd like to know, researchers, from your perspective, is there something that's unique about working with undergraduate students that you particularly enjoy? I know that you get to work a lot with graduate students as well, with postdoctoral researchers, but is there something special about that undergraduate student experience?
For me, it's probably the most rewarding to be able to work with someone and help them get to where they want to be in their next steps. And as a undergraduate, I think that I had a lot of help along the way, and I know how people's mentoring helped me formulate what I wanted to do. And as I understood more about what I wanted to do with my career, they helped me most in understanding how I could get there. And for me, it's just rewarding to be able to pass that on. I see some heads nodding to that. I think that must be important to everybody.
Yeah.
Definitely. And again, like I said, their level of excitement in being new a lot of times to the lab. I mean, it brings me back to the first time I looked into a microscope and saw live cells. Now, yeah, I work with cancer cells, so maybe they're not the best cells, but when you share that experience with someone for the first time, when they look in the microscope and they're like, oh, wow, it takes you all the way back to why you love doing this.
Yeah, I agree. And like Dr. Stewart mentioned earlier, students at this level, they've been learning about these concepts in a classroom, and some of them kind of seem like these ethereal concepts, like, yeah, I know about, cells and things like transcription, for example, but, how does that really relate to what a scientist does? Like, how does a scientist use these concepts to actually get new information, or to help people? And so this, what I like about, the undergraduates is that you really get to see these connections start to be made. And it really helps put them into connecting these concepts with real world applications. So that's an exciting point, both for the student and for on our side as well, to see that happening. It's very rewarding.
So one thing I think that we haven't really covered as much yet, that I'll just say a few words about, and then if anybody has questions about anything specific, that would be good. So we discussed earlier about how students could have that virtual experience with us doing what we'll call a paper project, or paper literature review, the opportunity for data analysis via web portals, and working with us on that, and also these in-person experiences where you get that experience within the laboratory. And some of that experience may be with tissue culture and looking at, for example, the metabolic response in cell cultures as a response to treatment that could include drug treatments and nutrients to augment those gut drug treatments. Also, some of the laboratories here, like Dr. Sergey Kropinko and Natalia Kropinko, had developed genetic models to be able to study folate metabolism. There's research in animal models looking at the response to alcohol and different cognition parameters from that. And then Dr. Martin Kohlmeyer has a clinical group that does nutrition-related feed trials, looking at the genetic and metabolic response of individuals in those feed trials. And Dr. Carol Cheatham is involved in research that's looking at the response to nutrients, and a lot of that involves cognitive responses. So there's lots of cell research, research with animal models, and then also with volunteers from our community that come in to work with us on looking at the response to nutrient or dietary intake. So there's lots of different kinds of opportunities.
Lots of opportunities, and ties really well to some questions we've had coming in about what do we actually do if we want to research with the NRI? So what's the process for application? So Brandy has included a link in the chat that directly links to internships and our application process there. Dr. Sumner, just out of curiosity, outside of internships, with students who are working during the school year, is there a minimum amount of time that you need a student to commit during the school year, or anything like that that students should be aware of?
So there are, through the BSPH program and the MPH RD program, where some of the individuals end up coming to work with us because they're working on their paper projects or their thesis or their practicums, there are a minimum number of required hours within those. And I don't know all those off the top of my head, but we can look those up. And then the coordinator for those programs, of course, meets with the students to go up. If you're not in one of those programs, I don't think we would have a minimum or required number of hours. That's something that would be more up to you. And then the actual schedule, we try to definitely work around anybody's courses and when they have tests, and be really flexible on that also.
Thank you, that's perfect. And Alleigh, if you're still here, I was just kind of curious in general, did you find as an undergraduate student that it was easy to find a good balance of getting your research work in with your classwork? Do you have any advice for students who might be interested in pursuing something like this?
Yeah. So I worked with the Sumner Lab, and part of the way we set that up is it is Nutrition 295 for me. So it's part of my coursework. And they recommend that I want to say it's for every hour you sign up, you spend 3 hours that week. So whenever I was signing up for my classes, I was also signing up for research as well. So that worked well for me, and that whenever I was planning my classes, I would also give myself like a set class almost where I would be spending time on research. And I think that really helped me going into the semester knowing I have these classes to do and I have this research requirement. And I think it really kept me on a good schedule.
That's great advice. Thank you. Question that came in for the researchers. It's a little bit more specific, but I think a great, interesting question. If someone is interested in ways to change the BMI chart in the future and wanted to know how about that, what kind of advice for research would you give them in that area?
I think, okay.
So to change the BMI chart, so I think maybe that would be in reference to what is considered to be healthy for different individuals based on their BMI, because there's, I believe that's what would be the question around. So I think that would be a great practicum or paper project for somebody, and that's probably where I would recommend to start, and to review the literature and what the US uses for the BMI cutoffs and what they consider to be underweight, healthy weight, overweight, obese. And a lot of that's according to CDC guidelines. But then how does that reflect in subpopulations? And I'm thinking, you know, first of all, for a military population, BMI sometimes is not something that would be used alone to be able to designate someone as being obese, because that could, there could be other parameters leading to that, right? So then, and then to look across other countries also to look at those BMI cutoffs. And so, you know, I think doing some sort of literature review on that and summary of that, seeing if you could get a publication on it, and then making recommendations. But we really need to link this individual who's really interested in doing this with, you know, the leaders at NRI and in our department in BMI. Right?
Yeah, and also just to add to that, they might want to look to somebody who works in health policy. And Gillings has a department focused on that, because really what you're talking about is making policy change.
Yes, yes. And one of the things, I'll give an example, one of the MPH students who wanted to work with us recently on female athletes and their use of supplementation, right? So I think the supplement part, you know, as a nutritional biochemist, I know quite a bit about, but female athletes and the importance in sports medicine is something that I'm not the expert in. So what we did is we called in our experts. So we found an expert who's adjunct faculty in the Department of Nutrition and asked him to work with us and that student on that topic. And he was more than happy to do so. And we've just had a manuscript submitted, and it's been revised, and Molly Jean Murphy, who was the student working on that, is the first author on that paper. So we're really proud of her for getting that publication resubmitted.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you brought that up, because that's such an important point, is that you can have these co-mentor situations. So as you're looking at, you know, a potential mentor, you may think, oh, well, I really am interested in what they're doing, but maybe there's another aspect I'd like to have along with that maybe quite isn't in their wheelhouse. And in those situations, we can pull in other faculty members, even from other departments, into the conversation to make these sort of joint mentoring efforts. And those projects actually end up being very interesting because they're pulling in multiple disciplines. So that's absolutely a possibility.
And I'll address something in the chat from Ashley Leonard. She asks about research with athletes and eating disorders. And to piggyback off of what Blake says, the research campus actually has several different universities. We have 7 who partner on the research campus on occasion with projects, and Appalachian State is known to work with athletes. So this might be an opportunity where you could pitch an idea and it might lead to some kind of project or something like that. To the best of my knowledge, and I want to make sure that the faculty members here correct me if I'm wrong, we don't have anybody that deals with eating disorders at the NRI. So I think we would have to find a partner in a situation like that. And it might be a main campus partner or another research campus partner like Appalachian State. So those opportunities are there.
In terms of eating disorders, I think the new visiting scholar, Dr. Good, who is actually in Department of Social Work in Gillings, I think she works on eating disorders and binge.
That's awesome. She's brand new, so I hadn't learned about her yet.
Yeah. So that's a really good point, though, Brandy. For about any topic, we partnered recently based on a student's interest in oral cancer. We had someone, we invited someone to be a co-mentor with his project who's from the School of Dentistry, because that's very important in the identification of oral cancer. And oftentimes when people are suspected of having that oral cancer and go on to have the pathology done. So there's many cases like that. In terms of any kind of nutrition and eating disorder, psychological, etc., pregnancy complications, on many of those topics, we actually have this exceptional MPH program to draw from the candidates in those programs and the work that they're doing, who would, I'm sure, be happy to help in almost any topic area as well.
We did also have one question come in. It was in a message to me about Nutrition 295, wondering about that course and if it was limited only to junior and senior nutrition majors. And I did take a quick look, and you'd probably want to verify this with your advisors, but it does seem like that is just for undergraduate students who are enrolled in the department's BSPH program specifically, not on a year, but you do need to be enrolled in that degree program, and you do need the permission of the instructor that you're working with. So I would just advise making sure you're working with your advisor if you wanted to get enrolled in that course, which is that mentored independent research course.
Yeah, and I did want to mention also for people that aren't in the BSPH program who because that program only accepts so many students. So if you're not in the BSPH program, but you would like to see something similar to that were more students enrolled in that, I really think a nice email to the school would be really important, because that helps us know that there are more people who would like to be involved. And I think that could come to me, and I could pass that on to the people that coordinate the program. I think it's Merrick Stieblo right now. You could look that up and see. He would be a good one to send an email of interest to.
Wonderful. Thank you for that recommendation. If there are any other questions, please feel free to send them out in the chat or ask them here. If we don't have too many questions, we'll give you a little bit of your afternoon back, but hopefully you found this very valuable. I know I'm always excited to learn about these opportunities. Alleigh actually says a great recommendation to talk to for a student might be Jonathan Ernst. So a good contact point there. So fantastic. I love the students supporting other students and knowing all the right people to get to on campus. I feel like sometimes that's the most important thing to learn as an undergraduate student too.
Speak briefly about the application process, what it looks like, just some things that I've learned over the years. So I think that you need to plan on having a minimum of about 8 weeks, and we can go up far longer than that as long as you have a partnership that continues working. But you need to have time to devote. So things that make them successful are students who are willing to adjust their schedule to make it work when the researchers have other things like grant applications that are due, or they're also writing. So an ability to be flexible is always going to be a good thing for a student who is looking to come in, especially in a more short-term internship. And then if you can reach out to a faculty member directly, as Sarah mentioned, and pitch your idea, that is going to make it more likely to be a successful partnership, because these faculty members are so excited when some new idea comes to them, like changing the BMI chart. And so if you have something in mind, it's always received better than a generic, can I intern with you this summer? And then what does the process look like? So it's a little bit different for UNC Chapel Hill students versus non-UNC Chapel Hill students. So you guys have a leg in the door already, because we are already connected with you, and that application process goes a little more quickly, and it is a little easier. And what happens is we have to submit paperwork through the Office of Human Resources that says we're not taking advantage of our interns. We're actually giving them a learning experience. And so that is the process by which we apply and get approval. So there's a plan laid out for what you will learn while you're in here. If you're a non-UNC student and this is interesting and you have friends who are at other colleges, let them know that they can also reach out to us. There's just one extra step involved, and that is that we have to vet them a little bit more than we do the folks that we already know about at UNC Chapel Hill. So I will also say, to close this out, that there are so many different kinds of activities, and the folks who are thinking ahead and acting now are going to be the first ones in the door. And once Blake or Delisha or Susan reach their capacity, then you're going to get put on a wait list for another time. So those are my nuggets that I've learned across the years.
Thank you, Lindsay. All right, so if we don't have any more questions, I want to say a big thank you again to Dr. Sumner, to Dr. Stewart, to Dr. Rushing, and to Alleigh for really coming together and speaking about the research experience. And then another big thank you to Brandy and Susie for being here to talk about the overall experience about applying for internships. And again, all of the pieces that will kind of tie back to coordinating your work with our team at the NRI, should you choose to participate in research with us. And then a big thank you to all of you students for attending. We are always so excited to share the NRI with all of you on main campus, and we are excited and hopeful that we'll get to work with some of you in the future. I hope you guys all have a great afternoon and enjoy the rest of Research Week. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.